Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike the Cranky Fan, following a wonderful 4th of July weekend up here in the Northeast. I don't think we could have asked for better 4th of July weather than we had this last weekend. Cranky Fan, are you all filled up with stogie and all your other 4th of July plate fixins?
You know, it's something. If you listen to the mailbag podcast we were on for Giants Nation, we talked about our favorite 4th of July meals, and I had absolutely none of those meals the entire 4th. This was a seafood weekend for me. Little secret to everybody: if you live in New York City, everybody leaves on Thursday and they don't come back until Sunday. So that means all the restaurants are open and you can go and eat everywhere. And me and Cranky Wife just plowed through about 6 restaurants of seafood and fun stuff. So I'm a little obese after this weekend, but I have a happy belly and a very relaxed and recharged belly.
Oh man, I've definitely packed on an LB or two, but I didn't get my red stripe this weekend. I'll say that much. Nor did I get any macaroni salad. However, I did have wings, which was on my plate.
Nice.
I did have cheeseburger. I did have hot dogs. And while I did not partake, several of my friends were smoking cigars. So that was all happening. A cocktail or two was consumed, along with some Coors Banquet beer. So again, not some of the picks I had, but all in all, it was a very, very good 4th of July for me. Somehow or another, I didn't get any color. I was outside literally the whole time.
There's a little beach right down the street from our apartment on the Hudson River. They made it really nice, and I sat out there for about 3 hours on the 4th, and I got some nice color right now. So I'm looking pretty good. Got my summer haircut, try to hide the grays, got some color, full belly.
You're looking sharp. Here. I'm rocking my BC Lions hat, as they had a nice come from behind win over the Montreal Alouettes. I'm always watching football. You can't stop me. And that's what we're here. That's what we're here for. If the only way the 4th of July could get any more American is if there was American football being played on the day, which maybe one day, but right now that's not a thing.
It was very disappointing that our U.S. soccer team lost to Mexico last night in the Gold Cup. That was very annoying. Just a quick little sidebar: the World Cup is next year, and I don't want to see stadiums where it's 80% of the other nation's fans anymore when it's on our home turf. That really aggravated me, having the U.S. walk out and being booed. So I know we're all Giant fans. We love, American football, but the World Cup is coming, and, I want to see this country rally, especially next year. It's our semi-sesquihana. Is that what they call it? Sesquicentennial, the 250th anniversary of the country. We have World Cup here, U.S. soccer. Get behind them.
Yeah, I mean, while in this country we don't really give a shit, the rest of the world really, really cares about un-American football. So be sure to support your U.S. men's un-American football team.
Yeah, well, we care for World Cup. We care for big events.
Well, we care when we're competing against anybody. If we're competing, we care. But
right.
Yeah, so I'm with you. Support your un-American football team. But we're here to talk about football that's upcoming. At this point, we're going to be talking about the very end of December and into January of 2026. So this will be, kind of a sunset on the American football season for the National Football League. And where I have the Giants in this fairy tale scenario is at 7-7. Now, I'll also say that this is probably the ceiling, by the way, my predictions to this. This is the ceiling as to the possibility of the most the Giants are going to get out of the season, is what I'm previewing through this, scenario.
And I believe I'm 6-8, and again, this is the upper limits of the ceiling. I am jumping up and down on the roof right now.
Wait, we're getting decapitated by the ceiling fan right now.
Yeah, geez, right back there.
Yeah, pretty much. So, with that being said, I have the Giants coming at their second game off of the bye They are at home hosting the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday, December 21st at 1 o'clock. This is like, I feel like since Brian Daboll got here, we've been playing the Vikings like every single year.
It sure does.
But this is concluding our NFC North matchups for the year. I don't know about Cranky fan. I've got this one as a loss in pen, and the reason why is pretty easy. Like, well, first let me talk about the Vikings a little bit. If the Vikings don't go 5-0 to start this season, now remember they're playing Chicago. That's not a gimme because they're playing Chicago, Atlanta, Cincinnati, and then Pittsburgh and Cleveland. So it's possible to go 5-0, but it would not be insane if they didn't. They might be in like a really dire wild card situation. And I think like a lot of people are just seeing, the Vikings and just sort of penciling them into like a really good season. But I don't know how I feel about J.J. McCarthy in his first year. And after those first 5 games, the schedule for the Vikings is really not easy, and it hits everything all in a row. It's like then they have a bye week, and then they play Philly, the Chargers, the Lions, the Ravens. They play the Bears again, but then the Packers, Seahawks, then the Commanders, and then they play the Cowboys, all before playing us at this moment. So they kind of do have like a chunk of gauntlet. And when your wins and losses stack up in clumps like that, things get dire quicker than when they're spread out. So if Minnesota's in this sort of dire NFC North wildcard situation, this Giants game becomes an absolutely must-win situation for them. And I mean, even right now in July, I'm sure Vikings fans are penciling this one in as like, oh, well, this is a win playing the Giants. No big deal. And I don't blame them. But when it comes down to that, when you have like, 4 straight losses or something like that, then it becomes like we have to beat the Giants. And that sort of feeling permeates throughout the entire building. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing. Aside from the fact that Kevin O'Connell is a great offensive coach, Brian Flores is a great defensive coach, even if they have some issues in the secondary potentially. And outside of that, like the offense, whatever question marks are around J.J. McCarthy, this is a pretty strong offensive line. The skill positions are deep as hell. Like I one day, pretty soon, if everything continues to go, quote unquote, according to plan for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, I think very soon this Giants roster can catch up to Minnesota's roster because it's such an unknown with J.J. McCarthy. But late in the season this year, I just don't see the Giants hanging in this game. I have this as a loss in pen.
Yeah, I don't think there's a bigger variance or unknown or question mark in the league, the entire league this year, than the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think it's an assumption at all that J.J. McCarthy is going to come in and be really good, if not great. I have a complete skepticism on him. I was not really high on him coming out of college, and then he's been out for a year. So you basically have a guy that, hasn't played in a year, who's still basically a rookie, who I'm not really sure about is going to be a really good quarterback in this league anyway. And, all the pieces around him are setting him up for success. But, you mentioned the coaches, they're great coaches. But like I always say, this is not 2 guys playing chess on a chessboard. These are players playing. And I have to see it to believe it to J.J. McCarthy. A, is going to be a good quarterback down the road, having a good career, but B, right now is ready to, take this team into the playoffs and do anything. So that's the Vikings for me. I mean, would it surprise me if they're 13-4? No. Would it surprise me if they're 5-12? No. I think they're just all over the map for me. And you put a gun to my head, I think they'll be worse than better than people think. But nothing would surprise me with this team because this is a complete unknown, and we're not dealing with a sure thing to start with. Having said all of that, this is the New York Giants we're talking about. And I think we're at the point of the season, I think we talked about it 2 weeks ago, where I think the switch has been made, that we no longer have Russell Wilson starting anymore. We've turned the page. I think there's going to be growing pains with Jackson Dart, and that's okay. I'm once we commit to him, I just want this season to play out and him get his reps, see incremental improvement from week to week to week, and I'm not necessarily caring anymore about the results. I um I see this as a loss also, but who knows? I mean, JJ could be blah, and we put on a really good pass rush if everybody is still healthy by that time of the season. Where we might make life very difficult for him because he's still only going to be playing in his 15th game, 14th game of his career in the NFL. So there's a potential that we can cause some havoc and get him, off kilter and make mistakes. I just think that, as a roster, it's a better roster than we are. To your point, they're probably playing for something more than we have. And I have that as a loss in Penn.
One other thing to note, if Jackson Dart is playing in this game, this is going up against a Brian Flores defense is incredibly difficult. Like, I'm trying to think of the most difficult defenses to go against, and Wink Martindale, Brian Flores, Steve Spagnuolo, all these names are coming to mind. Sure. So, and I would even say, kind of segueing into the next matchup, like Patrick Graham, I don't think it takes necessarily the nonstop pressure that is what does it. I think it's the confusion plus the pressure. But even just any defense that's going to rely on deceiving the quarterback pre-snap and relying on them to diagnose things on the fly post-snap is going to be difficult for any young quarterback, but especially Jackson. Well, I don't want to say especially, but for Jackson Dart more so than Cam Ward. You know what I mean? It's going to be a bigger deal. And then, you add in the fact that Brian Flores is going to disguise everything and then also bring 7 guys in his face against an O-line that's, on the best days has me going, oh, we don't suck today. You know what I mean? You add all that together and it's going to be really difficult. If Jackson Dart is playing this game, that's one extra gigantic, or that's a pole vaulting hurdle right there. So, all right, so we both have this as a loss. You have us at 6-9. Nice. I have us at 7-8. And that brings us to week 17 after Christmas Day. But we're not sure which day. It's either going to be Saturday the 27th or Sunday the 28th in the Sphere. Not the Sphere. Nope.
That'd be something.
Allegiant Stadium?
Allegiant.
Yeah.
Correct.
In Allegiant Stadium against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to just keep going. I have this as a win in pencil. I looked over this Raiders team. Number one, I found out that John Gruden's son still works for the team, and his name is Deuce. So take that with a chuckle if you can. But otherwise, I think that Pete Carroll leading the Raiders and bringing in Geno Smith is legitimately game-changing for this team. I mean, compare that to Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce from last year, and I couldn't really paint you a more drastic picture than that. I think that adding a guy like Ashton Genty to an offense that already has Brock Bowers and a 1,000-yard receiver like Jacoby Myers and somebody in the slot like Trey Tucker, that's a big addition to the team too. That being said, I'm not really in love with the tackle situation with Colton Miller and DJ Glaze on as bookend tackles. I did a lot of draft work on DJ Glaze out of Maryland a couple of years ago. And, looking at the defense, I think that the front seven is pretty legit. Max Crosby is always going to be an issue for every team, but especially the Giants. I just don't think that the backside is strong enough to offset, any sort of lack of offensive production or the front end of the defense. You know what I mean? When they start getting picked apart in the secondary, I just don't think that the pass rush or the front seven is good enough to overcome getting picked apart in the back and their offense 3-and-outing, which, I'm not guaranteeing any sort of 3-and-outs, but this is not a Raiders team that's just like Jacoby Myers, maybe a 1,000-yard receiver. We're not talking about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase here. Right. And Geno Smith paired with Pete Carroll, while that may be legitimately game-changing for the offense, we're not talking about adding, Tom Brady to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Bruce Arians.
I mean,
It's not what's happening here.
Let's put it in perspective. Russell Wilson is game changing for the Giants because based on what the floor was before. That doesn't mean all of a sudden we got Joe Montana.
Absolutely.
So I see the analogy you're trying to say.
That said, I do actually have this a win in pencil. I see where the Raiders are finally on a train track, whereas it felt like they were just sort of off the rails legitimately and just rolling around down a hill. Now it feels like they've landed on a train track and they're going somewhere, but they have a ways to go until they get there. That's how they feel. The Giants feel like they've already fallen off of that and that they've been on a track towards somewhere. They just have to hope that they make the right turn. I don't know. This analogy went sideways, but you get my point. I don't know what's happening here. Yeah. I think the Raiders are about a year or two behind.
Okay. I think this is a game which determines the fate of Brian Daboll. And here, let me explain. This is the last real game of the season, right? Next week, when we play Dallas, it's most likely you're not going to be facing Dak Prescott. You're going to be facing a team that's probably going to the playoffs. So this is the last real chance to play a team that's playing for something and really cares. And I think this is the game where it's going to be a challenging season. You're going to have a changing quarterback. You're going to have, you could have a locker room that could be divided on when that change should happen. Because remember, we don't get to watch practices, and players know who the better quarterback might be. And maybe potentially Jackson Dart could be the better guy, and he's not playing just yet. Or conversely, they're deciding to go ahead with Jackson Dart where he's not clearly the better guy. And that could cause some issues in that locker room. And, we are now on year 4 of this administration, and we have some guys that have been in that room for quite a while who might have enough. And this could be the game where you don't see maximum effort and you don't see a team that is clearly playing out the string, and that could be telling. So the question is, do we get to that point where that's going to be? There's also a chance that this team is slightly overachieving and is playing well, losing games is because the other teams have better talent and there is some kumbaya in that locker room and they're trying hard. If there's effort and they lose to a Raider team, but it's not because they just showed up and punched their time card and everything, but they just lost because, sometimes in this league you just lose. That could be a sign, that this team still supports Brian Daboll. And I think Mara is going to be really evaluating everything about this organization after this year. And I think buy-in from this team is going to be a very important piece of that. So are we going to have that or not? That's the question. And I think we are going to have that effort. I think that all this tough navigation for this season, I think he's going to go through the looking glass, and I think he's still going to have the support of his team. I think we're going to win this game. I'm going to put this in the lightest of pencils. And I think this is one of those ones, like, I think almost you see Brian Daboll get the game ball after from the team of like, hey, we're with you, man. Let's get through this. Let's get better. And, I think Dart is showing improvement week after week. He's still not lighting up the stats or the scoreboard or anything, but he does just enough to get it done. And it feels like we've had a history of rookies and new quarterbacks who sometimes do better on the road than they do at home. Doesn't it feel like it? Like the Daniel Jones win in Tampa, things like that. So I'm gonna put this one as a win in pencil. Not a pretty game. Obviously we have a ways to go, but one of those, we all needed that.
Interesting. I want to point out, so first of all, that's actually a really encouraging note. So if your forecast is that we are at the precipice of people throwing in the towel or rallying behind their coach, and they're choosing to rally around their coach, that's something that I don't think any fan will ever know until like an Athletic article comes out like 2.5 years later.
Typed up and ready to be printed or released 10 minutes after the firing happens. But yeah.
Well, I mean, just in general, like it's typed up and it's ready to go, but it doesn't get released until later, and then you find
Yeah.
out that this game, everybody rallying around this win saved the job or something like that.
Sure.
We won't know as fans in the moment that that's where the team's at, but maybe me and Bobby hear something at the Senior Bowl, or we run into some, you know what I mean, like,
Right.
or you just a beat writer kind of coded out, like, lets it kind of out there that it was like this was a big deal. So that's a really good note that you have. Hopefully that's where it goes. The interesting thing is you started it off by saying Dallas will be in the playoffs and not be playing for anything next week. That's an interesting perspective for me. You really think that way?
Well, let's broaden it. I don't think Dak will be playing in Week 18 for one of three reasons.
Okay.
1, he's hurt. 2, they're in the playoffs. Or 3, they're just done.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They're out of the playoffs. So
I don't think that Dallas is going to be fighting for the last wild card spot. I think they're either going to be in or out.
Exactly. Yeah. So let me slightly,
No. I just wanted to make sure I understood. I think that's plenty clear. Yeah. I get you. Well, also where it's like if he's not playing for bad reasons, it's like, well, then it doesn't. It's not that it doesn't count, but no one's going to care about what Brian Daboll does in a meaningless game.
Yeah, and we'll talk about Dallas in a minute, and I'll get some more thoughts about that. But yeah, but like again, I think the Washington game, the Minnesota game, those are both at home. Those, there still might be a whiff of maybe making the playoffs or something. So it's not we're playing for a pride game. Those games are still playing for something, and they're playing at home. So you have the crowd behind you. This is a case where it's 2 days, 3 days after Christmas. They're out in Vegas. I mean, Vegas, for Christ's sakes. They see that there's only one more week of this season left. Sack up. And let's see if this team wants to sack up for, this team, this coaching staff, their careers. So.
Okay. Yeah. I'm fully with you there.
I'm also thinking about going to this game, Grump.
Yeah.
Traditionally, we stay in Florida Christmas week, and the Knicks are almost always playing in Orlando. The Lightning have a couple of home games, but if that doesn't happen this year, I'm maybe mix up the Christmas week vacation and run from Tampa up to Vegas. I love Vegas, and I've had unfortunately the Giants have been there, the Gators have been there, the Gator basketball is this year, and I've just not had a chance to go watch my team. The Lightning have been playing Golden Knights. I've not had a chance to watch my teams ever play in Vegas yet, so this could be that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is going to be one for me. I like the idea that it's late in the year Vegas, but it's almost too, like, it being like right on top of Christmas. I'm probably just going to be in Jersey. But had this game been like like November 30th or something, I mean, say no more.
Yeah,
I'd find a way to get out there. And by the way, I'd probably be out there like November 24th and there until like December 1st.
I'll be sitting at a blackjack table for 5 days straight. So, yeah.
So that puts me at 8-8, and it puts you at 7-9 going into the final week of the season.
If you could sign up for that right now, would you take it?
100%. 100%.
Me too.
Because it's all predicated on the fact that Jackson Dart this is like a mulligan year for him. Like knowing that like your quarterback of the future didn't really play.
And if we're 7-9 / 8-8 at this point, we are showing significant progress over what we were before, and that's kind of what we want from Brian Daboll and staff.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine Russell Wilson getting us to this point if he's getting creamed on every play. So either he's so much better in the pocket than Daniel Jones than that it's like unfathomable, or the offensive line actually is playing pretty well, and you know what I mean? Like, I just don't see it any other way.
What's your, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is just your overall excitement level for Russell Wilson? Just having him as your quarterback and what might happen this season. What's your blood pressure like? I'm excited. Where are you with him?
I think it's like a tepid 6. Because you're talking about what I'm excited for, like from him this season, right? Like, I know he's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
signed beyond this season, but like,
Just this year. Just
yeah,
the fact that we get to the Meadowlands, it's 1 o'clock in early September. There's Russell Wilson under center. How excited are you? And just like, all right, what do you feel?
I would say it's a 6, but it's based mainly. So at this point in his career, Russell Wilson is going to need some heavy lifting from the people around him, and
Yeah.
the squads around him. I wouldn't categorize any of them as bad, but I wouldn't categorize a single one of them as good either. Like, I think the wide receiver room is like the starters in general are pretty good. I would say that they're average to above average, with room for that to be even more because Malik Neighbors is only in his second year. Now Malik Neighbors could take like some huge stride where he's just an absolute dog, which arguably he had a great rookie year, whatever.
Good rookie year.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like, you could take that step for sure, just in
Sure.
his own improvement and what you get out of a Russell Wilson getting him that much further. So that can bring that to like more of the above average area. The tight end room I think is average. The offensive line room I think is average to below average. The running backs room I think is average. So it's just like, it's one of those things where if we had more talent, like if we had one more guy at each of those spots, like let's just say John Michael Schmitz is a legit center. Let's say that Tyrone Tracy has 2 years doing what he did last year, 2 years in a row with that, so that we feel confident in Tyrone Tracy in the backfield, and he's also pass blocking. If we had one more, if like our wide receiver 4 was somebody like one of those like over the hill established veterans like Brandon Cooks or something like that, where it's like if Brandon Cooks is your number 3, you're as excited for him as you are Darius Slayton probably, but now that he's your number 4 and it's like, oh, Darius Slayton can just not play and it's okay, or Brandon Cooks can just not play and it's okay for like a couple of games here and there. I think all of those things change everything about the way I feel about Russell Wilson in this year. That, I don't know, is that a pretty decent kind of feeling?
I think you're a little more optimistic, a little more excited than I am. I'm using the analogy of, okay, I'm driving down the road, and all of a sudden my gas light, the light just went on, and I just need to get to the next gas station. Jackson Dart is that next gas station.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope the car doesn't run out of gas before I get to the gas station.
I think that's underselling him, because that's Jameis Winston right there. That's like not a starting quarterback.
No. I mean, I think there's a real possibility that Russell Wilson has that Peyton Manning type of fall off the cliff year. I'm not predicting it, but I think I am very conscious that it could very well happen.
Sure, but I think that would be, what you're hinting at is based on no evidence. And that's okay.
He's not as good as he was, and he wasn't really that great last year either.
Well, how good do you think Pittsburgh is?
I think it kind of goes pretty quickly.
Yeah, okay. How good do you think Pittsburgh is? Seriously. Because
they're not very good.
Thank you. They are a not good team, and I don't. If Aaron Rodgers goes in there and shuts me up by just like being amazing, and then I can sit there and I can go, okay, Russell Wilson's worse than I thought. I don't know what Russell Wilson's supposed to do in Pittsburgh, especially when like they started with Justin Fields. They were winning. Why did they switch to Russell Wilson anyway? Oh, because they started winning by a much larger point margin as soon as he went in there. So they were winning with Justin Fields, but they were winning like 13-10. You put in Russell Wilson and suddenly you're winning 23-13.
Let's be fair. I'm not predicting this happens. I am just, there's enough of I think this could happen that I'm tempered in my excitement for him. I'm not predicting,
right?
We're going to run out of gas. I can guarantee it, but I'm definitely watching that light. I'm like, come on. Let's get there. Let's get there.
I would absolutely agree with that. But I mean, yeah, here's why I think that analogy is screwing with me, because when you're going like that sort of feeling like, oh my God, I just have to get there. That almost feels like it's game by game with him, and I think that the fall off for a quarterback like this is more year by year, where it's like, you know what I mean? I don't think
it's perfect analogy.
Yeah, I was going to say
thought worked.
I don't think it changes your opinion on him. I just think that the reason I was disagreeing so hard is because the analogy just caused like a cognitive dissonance for me.
I think we're going to know what Russell Wilson right away. I think in the first handful of games are like, okay, this guy is replacement level. We can get through this season with him. I'm not have to worry about him. Or, he really lost his fastball, literally and figuratively. And let's hope for the best.
Yeah, I think I get you there.
Like, a lot of it's to be determined. And again, this is, in my opinion, a bit of a throwaway year where we're thinking about next year and Jackson Dart really taking over and him controlling, running this offense. And but I don't know. That's
well,
the whole point of this thing is that my excitement level for him isn't as high as I think it would have been, even if this was before last year. If this would have been last year, Russell Wilson, I'd have been more excited.
Well, so I feel like I have him graded pretty properly at about a 6, and again, that's like a tepid thing. Like, it's really like 5.5, 6. Think of it this way: where were you excited with Daniel Jones?
I mean, post surgery.
Going into next year, going into last year. I mean, post ACL surgery. I mean, because you have the athletic upside. Sure, he's more of a mover than Russell Wilson is. By then, we had already seen that the arm might be shot. We knew that going into last year. He doesn't read a field better than Russell Wilson does. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the experience Russell Wilson does. And to me, going into last year, even with this year's version of Russell Wilson, he clears everything except Daniel Jones' running ability. I think, anyway, unless I'm missing something.
I think we both knew that we were at the end of the Russell Wilson era last year before the season started. We were talking about, when he's going to get benched for the buyout and protecting him. We were talking about that this time last year. So I think we both kind of knew, the end was near. And I guess that really...
Right. So that put my excitement level probably firmly at a 2 or lower for him. So I don't think moving up 3 spots for Russell Wilson, 3 to 4 spots, is like crazy.
I also think we've taken this in a lot more deeper than I really wanted to. It's just more on the surface. How excited are you just to see Russell Wilson on the field playing for the Giants?
No, I mean, okay, yeah. On the surface level,
I wanted to have actually, but if we just take it back to the initial question.
Oh, yeah, no.
How excited are you?
No, not at all. So, I mean, I would say on a surface level, the fact that it's Russell Wilson, no. I mean, not really. I think he's a dweeb, but I do think that he can make shit happen on the field, and I think that he's a veteran. I think that when he does shit right, I'm going to high-five people, but I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of, like, I can't believe Russell Wilson did that plays. I think there's going to be a lot of what was, like, the career thing of Eli Manning, of, like, what a crazy catch by Beckham. What a crazy catch by Toomer. What a crazy catch by Burris or Shockey. And then you realize that those catches only happened because the quarterback recognized a one-on-one opportunity and gave his player a chance, which isn't to say that it's a ton of work for the quarterback to do that, but it takes a quarterback to make that decision.
Do that.
Exactly. So, again, I'm not going to be high-fiving you in the stands going like, Russell Wilson, what can't he do? But I think it'll be more like, could you believe that catch by Malik Neighbors, or Wan'Dale Robinson really shook that tackle and took it to the end zone, or whatever. I think we're going to be more clamoring over the other players. So if the excitement level of what Russell Wilson brings to the team, that for me is probably closer to a 5.5, 6. For it to be Russell Wilson, the guy that they got to put on the field, it's a pretty low excitement level. I could give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, he's an undersized guy. Part of what made him good was his, magic working in the pocket, which the athleticism has clearly fallen off. We always thought of him as this good guy and this leader, and of late, the reports out of the Denver Broncos building, the reports out of the later years in the Seattle Seahawks building was not great. You know what I mean? So for me to be specifically about Russell Wilson, I'm not that excited. No, sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Yeah, but I think it's also for what they needed, and in the progression with Jackson Dart and everything. I think it was the perfect guy to get me through this year, and I think that's what we got. And Jameis Winston, get me through this year is the backup I need in case I need it. That excites me. there's a plan, and like they're executing the plan, because some organizations do not have a plan.
So I feel like I've done its praises, but when you really evaluate the Giants offseason and what they did, before you focus on things that they didn't do, the first thing you have to acknowledge, at least in my opinion, is that they handled the quarterback room perfectly. They've crossed every T and dotted every I, in my opinion. They've got a starter for this year that they're not committed to long term. They have a backup for this year to back up the starter and not force their guy to play when he's not ready, and a backup for the guy next year. And then they went out and they got their guy. Those are they hit it on a three-pronged attack, and they did all three. I don't think you can pick a better person for any one of those three to fit that job, with the exception of Jackson Dart, which would have taken giving up absolutely everything to move from where they picked Abdul Carter.
Would it take losing to Indianapolis, maybe?
Well, it would take yeah, but I think it would take more than that to get first overall by the end of the season.
Well, who knows? I mean, it's butterfly effect. Who knows what would have happened if we lost that game?
Well, yeah. I mean, nevertheless, that's not the situation they were in the offseason. That's the situation
also,
they were during the season. They
probably wouldn't have done this either. I mean, if they had the number one pick and if they have Cam Ward, they're probably not getting Russell Wilson to be the fill-in guy.
That's
probably
true. Yeah.
They're probably just going for a durable 10-year backup in this league who knows his role very. You're never going to start. You're going to be the trusted guy who carries the clipboard and is the voice in the ear of the rookie and all that stuff. So, on the conditions on the ground, this is the hand they were dealt. I think they did as good as they could have done.
Right. So when you're talking about how they attacked the off season, the win against Indy is off the table. So where they were, the only way it could have been quote unquote better is if they gave up absolutely everything to move up from where they grabbed Carter just to get Cam Ward and have him sit, which I would argue is not better. So, I think that they've handled the quarterback position perfectly for this offseason, and that may have come at the expense of other positions, but it's the most important position in sports, so I'm fine with it.
I'll take it a step further. I also like the reports I've been hearing, ever since the first mini camp, that Jackson Dart has been taking more reps with, the twos and some of the ones, and I think I probably would have thought originally. They're throwing him into the fire and doing some stuff, too.
I would agree. I mean, I know it was just spring, but I agree. It's more than I expected.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go into...
That also sounds like a coaching staff that feels pretty confident that, they're going to be around more than just being a lame duck year, too.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least they're coaching that way,
Correct. Yeah.
And that brings us into January of 2026, the year of Dart, possibly. The Giants are home hosting the Dallas Cowboys in a Week 18 game that I predict will not mean anything. I think that the Giants, technically, with the record I gave them at 8-8, I'm sure they're firmly in an NFC wildcard situation. But yeah. I think that they would have to win this game, and Minnesota would have to lose, and I don't know, maybe Seattle has to lose, or San Francisco has to, like 2 or 3 things are going to have to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
There could be 60,000 Cowboy fans at that game because it's going to mean a lot to them.
You think so?
Yeah.
I see. I don't know what to think of this Dallas roster, and I wouldn't if I were a Cowboys fan, honestly.
No, I mean, what you're portraying of they need to win and Minnesota has to lose or something to get in the playoffs. They're going to be like, well, we need to win this game. This is an important game for us. We need to go.
I'm talking about the Giants, not the Cowboys, because I have them at 8-8.
Oh, see, I have them lower than that. So
you have them at 7-9.
Yeah, but I think they're out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm saying is that technically they're in it, but I think that they would have to win, and 2 other things would have to happen. So it's I think Giants fans are sort of crossing their fingers, but they know that they're not good enough.
I have it in my warp brain. I have it. They were eliminated last week. They beat the Raiders, but they got eliminated.
Yeah, I mean, or that. It's just hard to imagine an 8-8 team completely out of it. But I think that they're not mathematically out of it. They're just most likely out of it. That's the way I'm looking at this, which makes this mostly a meaningless game because I don't like this Dallas roster, and I wouldn't even if I were a fan. I think that Dallas is in worse shape than the Giants, and it has nothing. This isn't a Dak Prescott versus anybody conversation. It's just look at this roster. It looks like a weird mix of young and old, and no in between. There's just.
What are they supposed to be? That's
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, like who are you rallying by? Obviously, you're rallying around Micah Parsons, who's going to need a new contract. By the way, they're obviously rallying around guys like CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens and Jake Ferguson. But you look at the defense, like Dante Fowler. It feels like Dante Fowler has been in the NFL for like 100 years at this point.
I feel like he played for Spurrier at Florida. That's how long it's been.
Yeah, I mean, Osa Odigizua, who's, not really a household name, but, like, again, feels like it's been a while. I don't really look at this Cowboys defense run under Matt Eberflus as a strength anymore. You know what I mean? When it was...
Well, first of all, let's start at the top. Brian Schottenheimer is the coach.
Brian
is he pumping anybody's nads? Anybody?
Maybe Jerry's to get the job.
He just feels like the guy who's like the fired offensive coordinator at X.
Yeah, I would agree.
One of these guys, he's in the Mount Rushmore of guys who fall upward.
Norv Turner.
Norv Turner at least was a really good defensive coordinator, or an offensive coordinator rather.
Yeah.
Some of these guys they just fail at being head coaches. I mean, Schottenheimer was crucified with as a Jets offensive coordinator, right?
Yes, but I later read things that, like, Rex Ryan got, like, way too involved in the offensive room, and he would, like, interrupt offensive meetings, and he would just start talking over Shoddy, and he would, like, he would start drawing things from the defensive point of view, so it was all backwards to everybody. Like, I had heard enough stories about Rex Ryan, like, fucking around in the offensive room that it kind of led me to believe that, well, first of all, Shoddy is not a type A personality to put an end to that. And B, that Rex Ryan really was his own worst enemy. He was the reason that they were good, and he was the reason they were bad, right?
Sure.
So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt with the Jets, but otherwise I agree with you. And, Matt Eberflus as a defensive coordinator, to me, is not as scary as Mike Zimmer, and certainly not as scary as Dan Quinn as a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
When I look at this team, it looks like, and I said the same shit about the Washington Commanders, but I think they're at like the same spot of different trajectories. Whereas like Washington's getting better and they're at the same spot, whereas Dallas I think is getting worse and they've reached the same spot in the slope, right? Dallas has to fucking figure it out real quick, like what their identity is, or they're en route to a full rebuild very soon, whereas Washington is already full rebuilt, and now they just need time to add the pieces to core around.
But here's the thing, is that if it's time to rebuild, do you have any faith in general manager Jerry Jones being the guy to do that rebuild? They're going to try everything they can to do it as fast as possible, just throw money at it if they can, and it's not going to be successful. So they're on the edge of, I think, relevancy for, could be as long as Jerry's still alive.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, I think that I don't love the way Dallas handles the draft, but I think it's leagues better than it used to be. If you go back over a decade, Dallas's drafts were, pre Zach Martin, they were very questionable. But it was around that time that like some of the draft responsibilities were taken away from Jerry, and I think it was left where like Jerry just makes the final call now, as opposed to him being super involved. So I don't know how to answer your question. Like I don't know I don't even know if Jerry's going to be alive in 3 years. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I mean. I think, again, I'm not thinking like Jerry's going to be the general manager, team president, blah 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 for the next 26 years. I mean, I think he's getting old, and who knows how long he's going to be running the show. But during that period there could be some real damage that sets this team back a significant amount of time.
Oh, 100%.
Who's going to tell him no for anything?
Well, no. Sure.
Especially when you feel like time's getting short, I got to do something. Foolish mistakes are made, short-sighted mistakes are made.
I would even
something we should think about also with Mara being the owner of this team. He's not as hands-on, obviously, but he has final say. And, when you see Father Time and that clock starting to tick, you're like, I don't know how much time I have left running this team or being around. We need to start winning. And that's when I get nervous when you have these old owners.
Yeah.
You're on their clock, not the right clock.
Yeah. I guess I don't know.
Well, I
I
think
think
yeah,
yeah,
Mara,
I
but
think Mara's still like 5 years away from me starting to think about that. I think. Would you say that's like a fairly reasonable?
we get five. Yeah, and in 5 years, this team will be completely turned over from what it is now.
Well, I just mean in
Most
terms of
likely.
his age. 5 years from now, we're gonna start looking at it like, well, any one of these next few years. I mean, it could just happen now. You know what I mean?
Sure, sure. Do the Giants have any sort of succession plan in place?
I'm sure that they do, and I'm sure that we don't know it. But I am sure
Mhm.
that we could probably spend like a whole episode doing speculation. I don't really think we need to. You know
No,
what I
no,
mean?
no, no. I didn't want to get it now. I was just curious if you had ever heard ever
I
like
didn't
they're
hear
grooming
anything.
somebody to
No,
be the next guy.
I would. I have my. I mean, like, there's certain people who are just like, why is this guy around? And it's possible that that's why. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Where it's just like, I don't really know what he does. He has a very senior position.
He's just
And
walking around with a notepad taking notes and everything. And
right.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that could be. And that may even be like a legitimate thing where it's like, you walk into every room, you build the relationships with the people in those rooms, but you don't tell them what to do yet. You just take notes for when you do. Or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Or you observe how I talk to them or whatever.
Sort of like what I do at work all day.
I wish, bro. Um, Getting back to this Dallas game, um, I think that by this time of the year, if this team isn't headed to the playoffs, the Dallas Cowboys, which I don't think that they will be, but it is possible. If they're not, though, these older guys that I'm talking about on the team, I think they're going to be on IR. And that's going to
Hmm.
severely weaken an already lame horse. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like if they're not making it to the playoffs, then they're not as good as expected, and they're only going to get worse if these high profile, experienced older veterans that are supposed to be part of the starting lineup are now no longer there. So on
Yep.
the other hand, though, I mean, there's a legitimate offensive firepower of like the young guys, like I said, like you know C.D. Lamb and George Pickens and Jalen Tolbert and Mingo and Ferguson and Miles Sanders, although Sanders is not really a young guy anymore. But that's enough to put up points, even if they're not a good team. So I think that in a Week 18 game that's probably going to mean nothing to either team, I could see the Dart-led Giants going toe-to-toe with Dallas. But I think that it's going to be one of those games where it's like, oh, both of these teams suck. It's going to be horrible. But it actually is a really fun game to watch if you have no stake in the game, where like you might have like a 38-35 score of just some bad fucking defense out there. You know what I mean?
Hey, if Jackson Dart gives me 35 points in the last game of the year against anybody, I'm excited.
Well, that could also be like a pick six too. You don't know.
Okay, 20. If he gives me 28 points against anybody, I'm gonna have a stiffy walking out of there and being excited for next year. I'm serious. I'm deadly serious. Because if we get a guy who's just coming in finally and starting a couple of games and you know can give me one touchdown per quarter, mission accomplished for me. I don't care what the score is of that game.
My
So
my
I
hope though is that they walk away from this high scoring game um, with the better draft pick, not with the better score.
yeah, we have this argument every year or this debate about you rather just tank at the end. It's not really tanking, but you know, I'd rather move up a notch or two to get maybe potentially a better guy. But yeah, I hear you. I think we'll know like I said, we'll know the week before. If they mail it in against Minnesota, they're going to mail it in against Dallas. If they show fight against Minnesota, they'll show fight against Dallas. I think they'll win in pencil just because I think that the likelihood of Dallas mailing it in, I think, is more likely than us mailing it in. I, you know, who knows if Brian Schottenheimer is even received well by that locker room at all, even coming in there. Who knows if Dak Prescott is out for 7 or 8 weeks and another injury and they just kind of limping and then they're done. A lot of guys won't be on that roster next year. I just see the potential for them just completely white flagging it is greater than us.
I'm gonna throw
We have
one more
more.
thing in there while you just to piggyback off of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
There's speculation. There was speculation last year. Dak Prescott signed his new contract like week one, like literally week one. that day.
Yep.
And the speculation was like, well, this team can't afford Micah Parsons. If there's one thing I've realized about Jerry Jones is that his high-profile players don't leave the building, really. Even though all the public sentiment leading up to their extensions is, like, negative sounding. It happened with Zeke Elliott. It happened with Dak Prescott. I think it's going to happen with Micah Parsons, too. The difference is, how is Micah Parsons going to take it going through the negotiations throughout a year where they're not winning? You know what I mean? How does that affect his on-the-field shit?
I think these guys want to get paid, and I think the best chance for money is with Dallas.
That may be.
I think he'll be okay. I think he's going to try to extract as much as he can from Dallas. I think that's going to be the bigger priority for him.
My thing is, how calm is he going to be able to be throughout a season that they're losing, where he's not gaining leverage in negotiations? You know what I mean? Like, it's just an added wrinkle in there. Like, first of all, I applaud any player that's able to stay calm during negotiations and shit like that when all the public sentiment is negative or whatever. What's being presented to the public is not what's being presented behind closed doors. But when it's happening during a losing season, if you can't control... I don't know. I'm just saying. It's an added wrinkle. Not everyone is able to just deal with that shit.
I look at my crystal ball. I think they get a deal done, and again, he likes to maximize the effect of that announcement. I think you hear it like opening weekend or right before opening day that they've agreed to something going forward, and it's not going to be this year-long thing.
Well, I don't think that it's like he's at the end of his contract at the end of this year, though. So I don't think that they have to do something, but I'm looking it up right now.
Then I think it would happen right before opening weekend next year. Then I don't think they're going to go into a season doing that. I think most superstars usually get it locked up before, unless they're going like, we're done negotiating, we're talking next off season when I'm a free agent, and that's what I think will happen. And I think Micah Parsons is priority 1, 2, and 3 for Jared. I think they'll get something done.
I think that that's probably true. And just in looking up his contract right now, I lied to you. 2025 is his club option year. So this is the last year of his deal. He is making $24 million fully guaranteed. So he's either going to play on the club deal, which is not likely, or they're going to give him a contract extension. And to my point, when I tried to Google it, the first thing I found were Cowboys fans complaining and a leaked story that their Jerry Jones's camp and Micah Parsons' camp are not even talking to each other right now in May. So now I know May is a couple of months ago, but it's right up what I said. This happens every time. Jerry Jones is always having like these. There's always these negative stories. Is this guy gonna stay? It doesn't look good, and it stays like that, and then it's just done.
It's just done.
So I think that being said, me being wrong about everything else, I think you're right. I think that we'll have a deal
Jerry
done
Jones
before the end of camp.
Also in the show business and publicity the business himself. And what is the number one content creation on ESPN, FS1, all the shows? Only thing more than LeBron James is the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
And if you can be talking in May about the Cowboys and a contract thing, that's good news for Jerry Jones. Because you're right. At the end of the day, it'll probably get worked out. It doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of what goes on in May, but it keeps them relevant and it keeps clicks. It makes an entire cottage industry and big industry, going and humming. So that's why I don't follow that shit. That's why I don't watch Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless or any of that horse shit, because, it's candy for the imbeciles.
That being said, I interrupted you on your prediction.
I think we're going to win in pencil because I think there's a greater likelihood that Dallas mails it in more than we do.
Oh, okay. And is that due to coaching, or is that just due to
No,
situation?
I just think that, I think there's a greater likelihood of the combination of either Dak not playing because he's hurt, or they're out of it, or whatever. And I think there's a greater likelihood that that locker room just says fuck it and shuts down more than our locker room would. And
Okay.
again, I'm going to predicate that off my prediction from the prior week that they still care. That's why they won in Vegas.
So you have this as a win in pencil,
I do.
and that means you have us ending at 8-9.
That's fine, and I'll sign up
Okay.
for that right now.
Just making sure. That means with me having this as a loss in pencil, I have us also ending at 8-9.
Yeah.
So we arrived at the same sub 500s record, but a sub 500 record that I would sign up for in a heartbeat. Really.
And also, I don't think we had any of these like we're just gonna, or many, or if any, of like, oh, we have no chance in this game. We're gonna get our asses completely handed to us. We're gonna be non-competitive. I think there's different 8 and 9s.
Yeah.
There's 8 and 9s where, okay, overall, it was frustrating each week or something, but overall, I feel there's progress. And there's 8 and 9s of, this team is just mediocre, not going anywhere. And I think it's going to be the first one.
Yeah, I mean, there's not being competitive against the Eagles and
Kansas City
and the Chargers, and then there's not being competitive with like New Orleans or Chicago.
Yeah, if we go to Chicago and we lay an egg, that's disappointing, and that's.
Well, I mean, it would be like going to Munich and losing to fucking Carolina.
That's true.
I maintain that they were specifically giving Daniel Jones that game to give him like a win to end his Giants time on, and he couldn't even do that. And it was just a gut feeling I had. And just the way the events lined up, I was like, I feel like they're just giving him a win, and they're still gonna end up getting rid of him or sitting him or something.
I don't know. I don't think he's earned that respect level that you might do that for Eli or something, but he's Daniel Jones. The respect he got was getting the extension, basically.
No, it's not. I don't think it's the respect. I mean, at that point, they're moving on from him anyway. Drew Lock is not really better than him. Tommy DeVito is not really better than him. You had a collection of three bad quarterbacks.
I don't think we were in any position to say for any game last year, well, we'll give them this shot at the win when we were, pretty bad all year. Every game was going to be a struggle.
I guess. They could have started him sooner or later. They chose not to. I still think they picked the easiest game on the schedule on paper to try and bring him back, and then oops, can't do that. That's it. We're done here. Moving on.
Yeah.
I think they were moving on anyway, but one last look at him.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So, that's going to do it for our Pens and Pencils preview. The New York Giants training camp schedule finally did release. Tickets for those events go on sale starting July 10th. So today, you listening to this is July 8th, if you're listening to this the day it came out, which means that you have 2 days to figure out what practices you're going to that are open to the public and get those tickets. We went the last couple of years. I'm pretty sure people showed up without tickets and they were able to just purchase tickets when they got there.
Yeah.
But I would say don't chance it.
Yeah. Especially with a new quarterback, and people are excited about a new quarterback.
100%. Yeah.
That might raise the interest level because, again, in the offseason, we're all Super Bowl champs, and every quarterback is.
Every team's a Super Bowl champ to somebody who is 17 years old and younger, and they're all off during the whole summer. So those Tuesday morning practices that you think, oh, everybody's at work, no big deal. Like, think again.
Bullshit. Hey, remember, there's 12 million people live in the New York area. Unemployment is at 2.9%, 3%. We're still talking about a lot of people who don't have jobs.
That's a good point too.
But I know 2 people will be at the first practice.
We will both be at the July 23rd practice. So that is your chance to come give me a high five. Come give Cranky a high five. I don't know. Are you down for an early morning hot dog?
I was actually thinking what we could do if we want to get nuts.
I'm down for getting nuts. What are you thinking? White Mana?
I was thinking that to start before practice, and then maybe hitting the Candlewick Diner after for post practice.
Is White Mana open before practice?
Well, if that's not the case, then we flip
Flip it. I would say flip it.
I have not had a good. I love to try their pancakes at the diner. We go there first, then we go to practice, and then we crush like 13 White Mana hamburgers each.
Yeah, I'm fully game for that because this, my White Mana trips are going to be fewer and fewer going forward. So I haven't been actually since the last time I went with you.
That's right.
And I think that was 2 whole years ago, which is unacceptable.
I don't think we went last year. Yeah, we're due.
Yeah. So that's a great plan. But in any event, if you're getting up real early, Candlewick Diner, I don't care if people stop by.
The first 5 people who meet us there get to pay for our breakfast.
Yeah.
I think that's a great move.
Cranky will be ordering the soup.
And then if you didn't listen to the Giants Nation mailbag show we did last week with Bobby, we are doing a special road trip to Dillon, South Carolina for South of the Border, the Friday before Labor Day.
That is correct. I have no idea what it is we're talking about when we get there, but that is the thing that's happening.
I have a lot to talk about when we're there. I can't wait. 95% of you are like, what the hell is South of the Border? You will know what it is by the time we get there and have our show. It's going to be, I've already been talking with Bobby about what we're going to do on that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, if you have me driving down I-95 on your way down to Florida for the first Gator game, like I'll be doing, stop off at South of the Border on the North Carolina-South Carolina border. We'll be broadcasting from there, doing a live show, and, we'll give out South of the Border bumper stickers and fireworks from Fort Pedro. It'll be a lot of fun.
Oh man, I am excited for everything that this season is going to bring us. So with that, we will see you guys next week at our usual time and place, Tuesday morning. Until then, let's go Giants.